Cyril Ramaphosa slammed in Parliament. What does it mean, and is the nation's patience running thin? Let's find out. Spread the fire. Welcome back to SMWX. If you're new around here, I'm Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. First of all, I just want to thank you all for an incredible 2 weeks on this channel. We have had some massive episodes analyzing the General Mkhwanazi situation. Watch my interviews with Gogo Aubrey Machikri and Prince Mashele, which are all in the hundreds of thousands of views. And on today's episode, I want to, and we crossed 250,000 subscribers as well. So thank you so much for helping us to reach that milestone. Okay, so today I want to take a look at events in Parliament as President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered the Presidency Budget Vote. And it comes at a time when the president is under significant pressure, both because of the revelations from General Mkhwanazi, which have really undercut his message of being Mr. Cleanup in the ANC, blowing open allegations of massive corruption that have dogged the Ramaphosa criminal justice system. But also just because many people are getting a bit fed up with the dialogues, the commissions, the endless promises, and the very gradual pace at which things are moving. To say that this government moves at the pace of a snail's crawl would be to give it too much credit. I think that's the general sense. Now, up to this point, Ramaphosa has nonetheless been able to navigate a very friendly mainstream media environment, which often points fingers at everyone in South African politics except Mr. Ramaphosa. Zuma gets slated, Julius Malema gets slated, Helen Zille gets slated, but when it comes to Ramaphosa, there's always a slightly more friendly tone in the mainstream media. And I think that has, in some ways, frustrated the citizenry even more because it feels like the media lever of accountability hasn't been used. Similarly, in Parliament, because he's been able to enjoy a majority up to this point, Ramaphosa has largely been insulated. We know with the Phala Phala inquiry in Parliament, the ANC was able to vote that down using the majority. But it seems like we've reached a point in our country where the tide is beginning to turn. And the way that Ramaphosa was slammed in Parliament during this vote really needs to be examined, because I have scarcely seen a president excoriated like this across the political board, from even his GNU partners, MK, EFF, BOSA, ATM. So what I'm going to do in this episode is show you some of the things that President Ramaphosa was saying, because he didn't just reflect on the budget vote, but he made some political statements about commissions having been successful. And then we're going to look at how opposition MPs responded. So let's have a look at what President Ramaphosa himself said so that you can get an understanding of how the responses came. Let's take a look at this first clip and explore it.
The national dialogue is not just about talking. Like with CODESA, like with the National Peace Accord, like with the consultation process that we all went through as we drafted our new constitution, the national dialogue is expected to produce real results that have a tangible impact on the lives of our people.
Can we just stop there? I mean, the president is comparing the national dialogue to like the democratic transition in South Africa and the moment where we moved from apartheid into this new democratic order. That was a completely different time. Firstly, all the political players at that time bought into a negotiation process. You had the National Party, you had the ANC, you had various other formations there. There was the negotiation of a new constitution. This is just a group of people coming together to talk. There's no new constitution envisaged. There's no political dispensation envisaged in the future. So really, to try and rest on this liberation nostalgia, like this is some kind of new CODESA, it's just missing the mood. It's failing to read the room of the country. Like, people don't want this national dialogue because they're very skeptical about government's ability. Let's assume that the dialogue is a great success and it's framed right and the agenda is correct. This government has proven itself unable to execute on any major mandate. So again, I find it strange that the president is likening the national dialogue to CODESA. But you'll see what some other opposition MPs say after that. Let's take a look further at some of the things he said.
It is therefore strange that some people have voiced strong opposition to the establishment of this inquiry. Some have even said that I should take immediate punitive steps against Mr. Senzo Mkhunu on the basis of untested allegations. Not only would this be unfair, but it would also create a very dangerous precedent.
I mean, just on that, he's literally just fired Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield, which he didn't think would set a dangerous precedent. A number of Mkhwanazi's allegations do still need to be corroborated. I wouldn't say they're completely untested, but we already have one very apparent contradiction with Minister Mkhunu's perspective, which is that he told Parliament he didn't know this intermediary, Brown Mkhotsi, whom Mkhwanazi outed, and later it seems that he did know him. And in a statement, a media statement, he said he did know him and he was his comrade. You don't need a commission of inquiry to realize that misleading Parliament is seriously troubling and worthy of, yes, a punitive sanction, because if ministers can go around misleading Parliament and saying they don't know people who are then implicated in serious wrongdoing, even allegation or not, then what's the point of having a president who has power over ministers? So I do feel that the ANC is obfuscating a lot here, because they are conflating some of the things that still need to be tested with some of the things we already know that have come out, particularly about Minister Mkhunu's conduct. Cool. So before we go to some of the reactions from opposition parties, because you have to see some of these reactions, let's see what President Ramaphosa finally says about how he believes commissions actually are a good thing and do change things in society.
Some people have even resurrected the tired line that commissions and panels that we have established in the past have produced meaningless results. This view is wrong. It is not borne out by evidence.
Right, so you've heard the president's perspective. These commissions actually have been fine. Everything has been working in perfect order. And South Africans should stop complaining that commissions don't work. This was the best thing that could ever have happened to South Africa, and we should just sit back and wait for the commission to do its work. All right, so I'm not going to interject too much with my own views, because I've done lots of analysis on this commission, and safe to say, I don't think that view is accurate at all. But let's have a look, because opposition parties cooked the president after all of this.
Ready to take your podcast to the next level? At Ayeye Studios, you can film, edit, and release your podcast all in one place. From crisp visuals to clean sound, we've got you covered, and we can even distribute your podcast on YouTube and other platforms. The best part? It's brought to you by the same team that brings you SMWX quality. Are you ready to take your podcast to the next level? Welcome to Ayeye Studios.
The president is in such a weak position that he's making opposition parties look good at this point. Now, first up, we had effectively leader of the opposition in South Africa, Dr. John Hlophe from MK Party. Now, MK has been having its own internal problems, but the Ramaphosa presidency, with all this public dissatisfaction, has opened a door for MK to walk straight through and put him on the defensive. And I must say, this was one of the strongest speeches I've heard from an MK leader in parliament. Dr. Hlophe was not holding back. Let's have a look at what he said, and we're going to go through various parties and also the ANC's responses to the cooking that the president received. Have a look at this.
This is a president whose couch swallowed millions in foreign currency, Ipalapa. While desperate South Africans trying to survive by selling food on street corners are harassed, chased, and arrested by police, you, Mr. Ramaphosa, hide dollars like a hustler stashing stolen goods under a mattress.
Honourable Hlophe, please take your seat. There is a point of order. Honourable Skhosana, what is your point of order?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I'm rising on Rule 84. The leader of the MKP here says the president is broken beyond repair. I don't think that is parliamentary in reference to the president.
Honourable Skhosana, honourable members, please allow me to rule. Honourable Skhosana, that is a matter of argument. It is not a point of order. Honourable Hlophe, please proceed.
Yo. No. The cooking was real here. The cooking was real. And this happened for like 7 hours after Ramaphosa's speech. So Hlophe coming through with Palapala. You see, the thing about the General Mkhwanazi statements is they've now reminded us about the Palapala situation, which some people in the nation had forgot about. And things are just compounding to a point where it's getting very difficult for the president to respond and present himself as an agent of clean governance when we're facing this kind of crisis within his own criminal justice system at this point. Let's see how it continued.
And today, we are asked to fund this office to rubber stamp this betrayal. Never, never. Mr. Ramaphosa, you claim to fight corruption, yet you are the living, breathing embodiment of corruption itself. Under your watch, South Africa has become a land of commissions of inquiry without convictions. Endless talk shops designed to pacify the public while looting continues. We talk of a conflicted president. General Mkhwanazi, in a revelation that should shake the foundations of this parliament, exposed that the police are captured by criminal syndicates. But let us be clear, there are good men and women in SAPS, brave officers who protect our communities with integrity. These honest officers are being tarnished by a few rotten apples at the top. Recently, the head of crime intelligence and other senior officials were arrested, a sign of deep instability at the highest levels. Some even argue they were targeted for doing their jobs too well, which makes this arrest even more alarming and remarkable. The MK party stands firmly with General Mkhwanazi and all other government officials who stand for peace, justice, and the rule of law. We support those who expose the rot, no matter how high it goes. Mr. Ramaphosa, you speak of fighting corruption, yet you place your own Minister of Police on special leave instead of expelling him from the cabinet, as you recently did with regard to the DA Deputy Minister.
And it didn't stop there. The hammering continued. The EFF's national chair, Nontando Nolutshungu, then took the stage and had this to say.
The corrupt under this government are shifted around and has not renewed the state. Instead, it has refined the machinery for corruption. It has been a presidency of scandals after scandal, cover-up after cover-up, and an astonishing eroding of the faith of our people in law enforcement agencies and Chapter 9 institutions. There has been no light at the end of the tunnel, but rather an oncoming train that has crushed the belief of ordinary people in democracy, justice, and opportunity. Let me begin with the most recent scandal. The Minister of Police, as reported by KZN Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, Minister Senzo Mchuna was caught dismantling the political killings task team, a unit with over 100 convictions, over 1,800 years in sentencing. He was exposed of dismantling it, withdrawing over 120 dockets in order to cover up his and many other ANC politicians' involvement in political assassination, in tender fraud, connections to criminal enterprise, charges such as that of Vusumzi Ket Matlala, who is said to have been sponsored ANC events and involvement in drug trafficking organizations in Gauteng and in KZN.
Yo. It's bad. It's bad. And it just continues and continues. I've scarcely seen, I think at this point, the president was hoping the EFF would just disrupt the sitting so that he wouldn't have to sit through 7 hours of being slated like this. Let's continue and see how the EFF's Nontando Nolutshungu continued.
As we stand here, Minister Mkhwanazi was not fired. He was not arrested. He was put on special leave. Something that the president has no powers to do. This has been another character trait of the Ramaphosa presidency, akin to a dictatorship, where he conducts himself outside of the confines of the Constitution. We have written to President Ramaphosa this morning, pointing out to him that he is engaged in an undermining of good governance and plain constitutional delinquency.
And it didn't stop there. Even Ramaphosa's GNU partner, the DA, laid waste to some of his legacy in criminal justice. Have a look at what Diane Kohler-Barnard had to say in this debate.
The next logical question that must be asked is, does our country have the ability to maintain order? Well, 14 months ago, Professor Kachalia, in his capacity as part of the National Corruption Advisory Council, handed President Ramaphosa a comprehensive report which claims to have detailed what plagues crime intelligence. Yet, to date, the President has yet to make the report public. It is in the interests of the country that we know the contents of the report and call on Professor Kachalia in his capacity as the incoming acting police minister to act on the findings of the report to once and for all clean the rot out of crime intelligence.
What I find quite astonishing about all this is that the DA is now tearing into its GNU partner as well. So it was like the DA saw Ramaphosa being hammered by different parties and we're like, okay, we also want to get in on this. So there they are in Parliament before the nation, just destroying the president right there in front of all of us. My director of this episode said Diane Kohler-Barnard looks like she was born to complain to the manager, and boy, did she complain to the manager of the country in this speech. So let's keep it going, because that was just a taster again. Action SA got in on the action, and Athol Trollip laid waste to Ramaphosa. Have a look at this.
You started this term with an increase in your cabinet from 66 to 75. This does not combat poverty and inequality, it compounds it, especially considering how profligate your new ministers are in pursuit of Voyager miles and luxury accommodation. You appointed the then Honourable Simelane, facing criminal charges for a dodgy loan linked to the VBS Mutual Bank scandal. As the Minister of Justice, you feigned no knowledge of this and prevaricated for months about this dilemma after you were informed, and then you shuffled her from justice to human settlements, a political maneuver to shield her from scrutiny rather than uphold accountability. This reinforces the ethos of impunity in your cabinet and your caucus. Members of your executive routinely undermine parliamentary oversight, either by failing to answer questions altogether or by submitting replies that evade substantive issues raised. The same applies to ministerial correspondence.
Yeah, so Athol Trollip. What? Yeah. No, my team is laughing at this, but even Athol Trollip got in on the act, people. Like, this is bad. This is bad, people. Let's go to yet another reaction. So we've had MK, EFF, DA, Action SA. Let's take a look at what Mr. Vuyo Zungula of the ATM had to say, because he also left no stone unturned.
Your President, Simongameli, has been characterized by panels, task teams, commissions of inquiries that cost billions, but with no tangible results. Every time there's a crisis that requires bold and courageous leadership, you outsource the responsibility to a panel, a task team, or commission of inquiry. These panels produce reports but dololo action. There are no tangible actions taken on the Zondo Commission. the Mufamadi panel on intelligence, and the Sandy Africa review on the 2021 unrest. Mr. President, the allegations made by an entire police commissioner that a minister is embedded with criminal syndicates requires more than paid leave, especially that the minister himself confirmed some of the allegations. The minister lied to Parliament, and that is enough to take decisive action against him.
Yeah, rough. And again, Ramaphosa's left himself in the position where these opposition politicians can exploit the weaknesses that have been opened by these allegations from Mkhwanazi, and suddenly from going from the person who had all the moral authority, you see him being torn apart by every party, left, right and center in parliament. And it's a tough watch for his presidency. It really does feel as if something is shifting in the national mood. Let's take a final look at what Mmusi Maimane had to say.
Mr. President, more than half of our citizens are living below the upper poverty line, which effectively means that in the medium term, when we follow the trend lines, that more and more, we will be spending more on social grants than we will on any other function of government. Mr. President, when you look at the trend line of crime, 26,000 people were murdered last year. Were you to take their coffins and line them up, they would line up from your door in Hyde Park all the way to the Union buildings. As you drive that route every single day, Mr. President, realize that we're dealing with a serious problem of murder.
Shoo, they said you can line up the coffins from the home in Hyde Park to the Union buildings. Yeah. It's a serious moment for the president. And really what I want to reflect on here is just that with the election result, South Africans sent a strong message and the ANC got a lot less power in parliament. But because they were able to take the lion's share of the executive, it kind of has felt as if there hasn't been a major shift. But when you see the opposition parties lining up one after the other like this, you really feel the effects of the previous election and the way that wave after wave of attack really can hit the president quite hard. And I thought this vote was a moment where we saw that shift in the parliamentary atmosphere and also the balance of power in parliament, because of course the ANC doesn't have a majority in parliament. If opposition parties were to unite in parliament, they would be able to form a government, they would be able to vote down the ANC in any given committee. So look, there were responses. I'm not going to go into all of them, but Ronald Lamola mounted a spirited defense of the president, saying that these commissions really do work, and he attacked Hlophe back and said, well, how can you defend democracy when your own leader stands for parliamentary sovereignty? And he attacked Hlophe by saying, you can't speak about ethics and morality when you're an impeached judge. Kusela Diko as well mounted various attacks on the MK party and said, the EFF can't read for constitutional meaning, and again said the MK was being inconsistent, and pointed the fingers right back at them. But the problem is that what these ANC MPs were doing when they responded, they may have landed some punches on the political parties themselves, but they weren't able to successfully defend the president. They were just able to launch counterattacks, which kind of insulted the other parties. But nobody really tried to say or stood up and said, yes, Senzo Mkhunu should have been placed on special leave in a convincing way. And that's because it's very hard to defend the national dialogue, what's happening with Mkhunu and all these commissions of inquiry. So we had a day that I think will go down in parliamentary history as a day when many things swung against the president, and we saw the power of opposition voices if they can be united for accountability. So, where to from here? The president has his work cut out for him. It feels like public opinion is sliding away from him very fast, and unless he acts decisively, this presidency could end up in tatters before too long. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching another episode of SMWX. What do you think? Do you think that Ramaphosa's speech actually was convincing? You're free to disagree. These are just opinions and views on this channel. We encourage open debate. Comment down below, which speech did you think was the most powerful? It was a 7-hour marathon session, so you can actually go and watch the full parliamentary session, but I've summarized it here for you so you can get a sense of why it was important in our politics right now. This Mkhwanazi saga just keeps growing legs, and we'll see where it takes us next. Make sure you check out my Prince Mashele interview, check out the Gogo Aubrey Machikri interview, and keep it locked on SMWX. Let's get to 300,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And thank you once again for joining us on this platform. Aye.